Hey guys, Socket here. Today we're going to continue on with our PC tool tutorials. This is number 10 in the series, and today we're going to look at the real-time analyzer. If you've been following along, the last few tutorials have been on configuring the PC tool, so setting up your input outputs and activating a controller that you're going to be using with the DSP. But for the next few videos we're going to focus on the tools within the software that are used for car audio tuning, specifically the real-time analyzer, the auto time alignment, and the EQ functions. But today's episode is going to be on the real-time analyzer. So today we're going to look at the real-time analyzer in demo mode, so you can become familiar with the features of the tool before you go out and try to start auto tuning. In my next video I'm actually going to set everything up in my car so that I can demonstrate how to use the tool to auto-tune your vehicle. So the real-time analyzer tab is found up here in the upper right. When you click it, you'll open the windowed version of the screen. That's what opens as default, so you'll have to maximize the screen so you can see it all. So what is a real-time analyzer and what's it used for? Well, basically it's a measurement tool for measuring the frequency response of your speakers. So along the bottom here is the sound spectrum from 20 Hertz through to 20,000 Hertz, which represents the span of human hearing. And for example, this grayed out section might represent a tweeter, a high frequency speaker that's running from 1.6 kilohertz to 20 kilohertz, those high frequency ranges. So using a microphone you would measure your speakers, and the real-time analyzer would give you a plot to show you how your speakers are responding and which frequencies they're playing and how loud. So you use the real-time analyzer to analyze what your speakers are doing, and then we use EQ to cut or boost certain frequencies to smooth out or shape the response that you want. So that is essentially what an RTA is for, or a real-time analyzer is for, and we'll now walk through the features of the Helix RTA tool. Okay, to better demonstrate the features of the RTA window, I'm just going to pop over to the Output tab and slide this slider across to make this a wideband speaker. So we'll go back to the RTA. And now you can see the tweeter target curve is turned into a full range speaker running all the way from 20 Hertz to 20,000 Hertz. So with that set up, we'll have a quick look around the screen. So starting with the right hand side, these are your settings. There are 4 tabs for your automatic measurement alignment, your channel outputs, your offsets, and the setup. So let's start with the setup first. So the setup tab, as the name suggests, is where you can set up all the various features of the real-time analyzer, and we're going to have a quick look at each of those in turn. So we're going to start with what we call the reference curve, often called the house curve or a target line. It's this grayed out section here, and it represents the ideal response of a speaker, in this case a wideband, and is the thing that you're trying to match when you're EQing your speakers. So you measure your speaker and they're bouncing around all over the place, and the idea is when you do your EQ work that you'll cut the peaks back to this target line and you'll boost any dips up to the target line so that your speaker's response matches this reference curve or house curve. In the PC Tool software, they give you a number of different reference curves that you can aim for. One is flat, so it's from the treble end to the bass end of the spectrum, it's dead flat. This is great for home audio, but not really good for car audio. So the car audio versions that we have are a SQ version, or sound quality version, and a daily version. Now, just using the SQ version as an example, so this is the bass end of the spectrum, 20, 30, 60 hertz. This is what your subwoofers are playing, and at the other end, 8, 10,000, 20,000 hertz is what your tweeters are playing, so the treble end of the spectrum, high frequencies. So in a typical car audio tune, you want this to be pretty much flat and from 3 to 400 hertz for it to start rising up, so you've got more bass in the sound playback as opposed to a flat tune all the way across the spectrum. And the reason for that is if you don't have this rising bass curve in your tune, it will sound very hollow. You won't have any bass at all. So quite often you'll see this rising bass end to a car audio tune starting around about that 3 to 400 mark, and going up 4 dB. This one happens to have a rise of 8 dB across that, from what is that, 2 to 8, so maybe a 6 dB rise in the bass. But you could have an 8 or even a 10 depending on how bass and boomy you like it to be. At the other end of the spectrum, sometimes people complain that the very, very top end of the treble can be a bit bright and fatiguing, so they'll often do a bit of a scoop out, as you can see in this house curve. But once again, when you're tuning your speakers, you're trying to hit this target line so that the response of all of your speakers follows this curve as much as possible. So that's the SQ version. It will give you a fairly neutral or tonally balanced tune, but if you want something a bit more lively with a bit more bass, you can switch to this daily tune, which has much more bass than the SQ, and has much more top end sort of chopped out of it. But you can also load your own house curves that you download off the net somewhere. But it's all a matter of taste. There's no right or wrong. Your tune in your car has to meet your personal preferences. So which house tune you select is completely up to you. Right, the next feature we want to have a look at is the scaling. So here on the on this axis is 0 to 25 dB, 0 to negative 25 dB. So this scaling resolution just simply allows you to change that scale. So it's now 0 to 50 and 0 to negative 50. I think the default 25 to 25 is just fine. Now the next feature is resolution and measurement time. So just to demonstrate the resolution part, I'm going to start the analyzer, and you'll see this red line bouncing around as I talk. So this is the RTA analyzing the sound of my voice coming through the microphone and presenting the frequencies and the loudness of each frequency as I speak. So the default is 1/12 octave, but if I turn that to 1/3, you'll notice that the line smooths out. It's less peaky because it's measuring 1/4 of the 1/12 resolution that we're just looking at. Or I could turn it all the way up to 1/24, and you can see it's now very peaky because the resolution of the measurements is greater. So human hearing is around about the 1/3 octave. So 1/3 or 1/6 octave is perfectly fine for car audio tuning. 1/12 and 1/24 is very accurate and honestly is really not needed. Essentially what that will do is give a lot more peaks and dips to your response, which means a lot more EQ work and a lot more EQ bands needed to be used to smooth out your response and get it to hit a target line. So the default is 1/12, but 1/3 or 1/6 is perfectly fine for car audio tuning. So time is next. It's essentially the amount of time that the RTA will take to do a measurement of one speaker. So when you hit this start measurement button, this timer will count down from 20 to 0 and then the measurement will stop. You have the ability to change that timer from between 10 to 30 seconds, so make it shorter or make it longer. But basically what's happening is when you start the measurement, your RTA will be doing hundreds and hundreds of samples, measurement samples, and will be averaging them out over the period of time to give you your final RTA response. So 20 seconds is a good compromise between the amount of time it takes and the accuracy of the measurement. The next feature is tuning mode, and this is essentially where you can choose between manual tuning or auto tuning. And I'll just explain briefly the difference between the two. So when you're doing manual tuning, you'll essentially take a measurement of your speaker, EQ the response to this target line, so you'll be cutting the the peaks and boosting the dips, and then taking those EQ measurements and transferring them to your output page, as shown in the little video above, and trying to get the speaker to follow the target line as closely as possible. So once you've entered all those EQs into your output page, you'll remeasure them with the EQs applied, and you'll get a response that's closer to the target, but maybe with still with a few dips and bumps. So you'll go along and you'll do a second round of EQ, and then you'll enter that into the output page and you'll remeasure it, and and so on and so forth. So that's the process for doing manual tuning under this Tune EQ setting. But if you want the system to do this automatically, you would choose Auto Set, and some of these buttons disappear. And what Auto Set does is it will automatically run through that cycle depending on the number of times that you've set here in the Extended Features tab, called Maximum Iterations. So for example, that measurement, EQ setting, remeasurement, re-EQing will go through 5 cycles before it stops. So that is essentially the difference between Tune EQ and Auto Set. There's a third setting here called Set EQ, which basically will automatically transfer the EQ settings over into your output tab, so you don't have to manually transfer them. And so that's the two essential tuning modes that you have: Set EQ, which is manual, and Auto Set, which is the automatic tuning feature. Okay, the final feature on the Setup tab is the Tune EQ, which is where you can change settings associated with the Auto EQ feature of the software. So essentially, when you're trying to EQ using this software, it'll be trying to cut peaks and trying to boost dips to match this target line. So these two settings are maximum deviation and maximum boost. Maximum deviation is, well, how close do you want the EQ to get your line, and in this case it's set to 0.1 of a decibel, which is extremely close to the line. My recommendation would be to change this to 1 decibel. So just type that in like this, not 10, 1 decibel, which allows, there's some variation within 1 decibel of the target line. If you have it set too fine, like at 0.1, you'll just use up a lot of EQ bands, and the system will struggle to hit that target line, and to be honest, you really won't hear the difference. So changing that to 1 decibel would be more in line with standard car audio tuning protocols. The second measure here, which is maximum boost, relates to how much boost will the Auto EQ feature apply to dips. And why is that important? Well, people say you shouldn't boost at all, you can overdrive your speakers. That's not entirely true. You can boost safely, but human hearing is more sensitive to peaks than it is to dips. So generally when you're EQing, you try to cut the dips down, and you will find that deep, narrow dips are actually a result of cancellations. and no matter how much energy you put into them, they're two waves cancelling each other out, or bumping into each other and cancelling each other out. Doesn't matter how much energy you put in there, you will not fix a cancellation. So this setting basically tells the auto EQ feature, that if it's beyond 6 dB of boost, then just ignore it. You can change that. A lot of people are conservative and will set that to 3 to be absolutely sure, but 6 is quite common and perfectly safe. So under the setup tab, there's also this extended settings feature, which can take you to, I guess, the advanced setup screen. Now many of the features here we've already seen and are the same on the base page. So this tune EQ configuration, this RTA graph settings and things is largely the same. The things that are different, however, are here you can set up or check that you're using the right microphone for your measurements. So you don't want it to be picking up your laptop mic, you want the measurement mic that you've got plugged in, so that will appear here. If you've got a calibration file, you can load that up as well. You can change from line to bars if you want to change the look of the measurement graph. You can change the color scheme from light to dark, so if you prefer a light setting, personal preference. The other thing that is different compared to the standard screen is this reference curve setting. So before we looked at SQ and our daily curves, but you're able to, for example, so I've got here set on daily curves. Oh, I want to put more, I don't want this cut out on the bottom end, I want to change that. So I'm going to move these sliders manually, up like this, etc., etc. There we go, and so I can go back, and there you will see the change to the RTA. So this simply allows you to customize your own reference curve or house curves, and you can save that and load that later if you want to. So just another I guess advanced features that are buried away in this extended setting button down in the lower left. Alright, back to our setting tabs. So we've looked at the setup, and now we're going to have a look at this automation, which are really settings related to the auto tune features. So one of them we've seen before is this reference curve button that we saw on the under the setup tab. That's the same, just accessing the same thing. And then we have these sliders which allow you to set offsets for your target curve and gains if you're linking particular channels together. Once again, pretty advanced features, and this normalization measurement offset that you can lock for all measurements. Once again, advanced features that you probably don't need to fiddle around much with if you're doing the automatic measurement. Probably best just to leave them as they are. Moving to the next tab along, which is channel select. So this is this, all of your speakers, so plugged into outputs A, B, C, D through to L. This will look different depending on your make and model of your DSP, but generally in my case we'll have, for example, tweeters on A and B, mids on C and D, mid bass on E and F, etc. So when you're doing the tuning, you want to make sure that you only have turned on the speaker that you are measuring and EQing. If you have another one selected, you'll find that it'll overwrite that when you hit set EQ. So the easiest way to do that is to right click on the speaker that you want. It will select it and mute out all the other speakers. You can of course just click on them one by left clicking, but much quicker just to right click and mute them all out. So once you've finished with your left tweeter, for example, you can right click to bring them all back online, and then I've moved to my my right tweeter to measure, and so I click on that and make sure that I'm measuring my right tweeter, and then moving to my mid bass, and so on and so forth. But it's important that when you're doing your EQ work, that you select your speaker here and then do the manual or auto EQ work, each speaker in turn, so you don't end up overriding the settings for any of your speakers. So that's what this tab is for. And finally, there is the sorry, I'll switch back to our original. And then finally, there are these offsets. So for example, if I start the analyzer and I'm talking, what I want to do is get the target and my measurement pretty level. So I can lift my measurement up here so that it's sort of in the middle of the target line, or if it's way down here, I can bring my target line down to match. So these two sliders simply allow you to sort of line up your measurement and target. So you can do EQ work, and they're not a million miles away from each other, right? So that's what those sliders are for. So that takes care of the right-hand side of the screen. If I'm running across the top of the screen, these are your various measurements. So for example, if we are taking a measurement, and here it is in white, and I say, okay, well, I want to store that, then I will right click on that M1 and capture that measurement. Right, so I'll stop now and stop the analyzer. So you can see that that measurement is now frozen in time, and that might be one of my speakers. And then I'm going to go on to measurement 2, and okay, I'm going to start measuring again, and blah 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 blah, and then I stop the measurement and I right click, and of course that will store the second measurement, and I can work my way along, and it'll give me different colors for my different speakers, and then I can work out whether I need to increase the level to get these two to line up, because at the moment the blue measurement is 3 or 4 decibels higher than the red measurement, so it's playing louder than the red speaker. So I might want to either cut the gain on that speaker or increase the gain on the red speaker to level match these two. But essentially these are your measurements, and you can select them by clicking on them, left clicking on them to get rid of them, or right clicking on them to store a measurement. So now we'll go and look at the bottom of the screen, and we will be in manual tuning mode, which is Tune EQ. So there are a number of buttons and sliders and things, and so what's going on down here? So first of all, you have these buttons here where associated with starting and stopping the analyzer and taking measurements and things. So you have a button here that starts the analyzer, so that'll start the it'll start the recording, but it's not actually taking a measurement yet. It's just recording the sound of my voice. And then when I hit start measurement, it'll start the measurement. It'll ask me whether this is the channel that I want to work on. I say yes, and so now you can see in white the measurement itself, and the timer starting to count down, and slowly that'll get more and more solid until it gets to 0, and here we go, 8 seconds, 7 seconds, 6, etc, 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 3, 2, 1, and stop. And now you'll see that the measurement has stopped moving because it stopped recording the measurement. The analyzer is still working. You can still see the red thing bumping around, but the measurement's now taken. The time is counted down to 0. So we can stop the analyzer now just to get rid of the stop it bouncing around. So the next thing that we would do is we would want to line this up with our target curve, for example, and so we might lift this up to here. We might bring the target curve to try to get through the middle of all the peaks and things. And this is not a great example because I'm EQing my voice, not a speaker, but just for illustrative purposes. Right? So the next thing I would do is then you want to tell the system what range do you want to EQ this. And so here are some this is where you set the range. So I want to use bands, EQ bands 3 to 29, which just leaves 2 for for the auto tone feature in your DSP. But I want to go from 25 Hertz, so I want to EQ from there all the way to 16,000 to there. Okay. Now I might say, well, I actually want to get rid of this big dip here as well, so I'm going to change that to 20,000. Right. And I'm not going to bother with this down here for whatever reason. I'm going to change that to 80. So it's here where you can set the range that you're going to EQ, and then I just hit EQ calculations. The green line is your EQ, so what it's doing is it's cutting that that peak, and it's boosting this big dip area. It is cutting all of this peaky area, etc., etc. Right? You can see it almost mirror imaging and trying to match this line as close as possible. So that has automatically calculated what the EQ setting should be, and then I would hit set EQ. And if I then go down to my outputs page here on the speaker that we've just EQ'd, you can see that the system has transferred all of those EQ settings into the DSP. And so what I would do now that it has EQ'd that, I would basically remeasure it and remeasure it to see whether the responses come out nice and flat, and then re-EQ it if I think it needed any more work. But of course this is just in demo mode, so it's not going to work. I will, as I said, run through this in a live example using the auto tune feature in the car. So they are basically the buttons and dials and things associated with the real-time analyzer. Quite a complicated tool to get your head around, but I hope that's answered some of the questions. If you're looking to use this tool for your auto tuning, as I said, we'll go through and do a live example in the next video. So quite a long one. I'm glad that if you've made it all the way to the end, that you stuck with me. But once again, any questions, please pop them down in the comment section, and thank you very much for watching.